In 1999, the PlayStation would see a massive influx of extreme sports games being developed and released on the system, many of which would contribute to the explosive popularity of the sport in general across the masses. And in many cases, it was the games themselves from these systems that heightened the popularity of the sport in general. So with Freestyle Boardin 99, that would see a release on the PlayStation in late 98 and early 1999, tried to expand on that popularity. But this game would also have been known as Zap Snowboarding Tricks 98 and even Fat Air Extreme Snowboarding in other regions that date back even to 1997 in Japan, both on the PlayStation originally and even on the Sega Saturn in 1997. So essentially it's just the same game, but it was rebranded under the 1999 name with Freestyle Boardin. So very little has changed with regards to the visual aesthetics, the gameplay styles. If anything, nothing has changed. It's just the same game, it's just rebranded under different names depending on the region that it was in. In many cases, the same game was released multiple times in the same region, but just again under different names. And for that reason alone, it contributed to the overall reviews of the game, seeing very unfavourable reviews across the board, stating that the game didn't really add anything new to the overall experience of this ever popular and upcoming genre or trend. While the game does have some decent visuals and modes to play as, but essentially if you've played one, you've played them all. But the game, unlike other games seen in this franchise or genre, the game is quite difficult to master. It's not as easy to pick up and play compared to other titles in the same category that was harder to pull off movesets and tricks and just overall gameplay styles in that respect. But it still adds something different, it still added to a unique appeal that you often didn't see in games at that time. So the game consisted of a variety of different modes that allowed you to play on like half pipe or big air events where you would have to hit a jump and try to gain the most amount of distance possible in order to gain the most amount of points, and also to do like tricks and so forth. But then you also had your typical downhill race style events where you'd be racing against other competitors, where you would have different jump points at different sections that you had to utilise tricks. So you had different objectives throughout the races. Not only had you to win, but you also had to try and gain the most amount of points possible. The only downside with the game is that the tricks were difficult to pull off, and in many cases trying to combine different moves to gain the most amount of points possible was also very difficult, because usually there was always a high score that you would have to beat in order to come first, and it was always so high that in many cases, unless you knew the right button combinations to pull off the right moves to get the most out of each score category that you could possibly achieve, it was very, very hard to do it. Even for myself playing this game, I couldn't do it. It was very, very difficult just to pull off moves, just simple moves in general, without falling off, and you would only ever average between 20 and 50 points, maybe 80 points if you were lucky. It was just very, very hard to execute in many ways. Like, the gameplay does work to many degrees, like it is good for what it does represent, but it would be sluggish with regards to the gameplay style when you compare it to other games like Cool Borders and other snowboarding games of the same category. This game definitely struggles to capitalise on those ideas, because with the tracks that are available, essentially it's the one type of track, but it splits off into different sections, and some are longer than others and some are more difficult than others, which also contributes to the game's overall difficulty, which will present more challenges. In many cases you'll have a lot more sharp turns, which I always find with these games more specifically that it can confuse the camera, because sometimes the camera, when it's changing and you're trying to change the position of the character, sometimes the camera doesn't keep up with it and it can leave you where you're not knowing where you're supposed to go, so that can also hamper the experience as well. Like, it's not the best snowboarding game on the system, it's far from it, but it does offer something a little bit different that will appeal to a select few but won't appeal to everybody. But if you're a fan of snowboarding games, this is another one you could try out. And regardless of which region you're in, the game was rebranded under different names, so there is a possibility that you can get to play it, or you might have played it already. Whether it's Freestyle Boardin 99, Fat Air Extreme Snowboarding, or Zap Snowboarding Tricks 98, whichever one of the three, essentially they're all the same game anyway. So there's a very good chance that many of us probably have played this to some degree, in some shape or form. But I would love to know your thoughts of this game, if you have played it yourself, and if so, what did you think of it overall? Is this a unique concept of game that you would be interested in playing, or would you prefer to play other games like this that were also released on the PlayStation, like the Cool Border series and the like? It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on this game, so be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you would like to see more content around other types of snowboarding games that were also released on the PlayStation similar to this, then be sure to check out the playlist on screen keen to see more of those games in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.